Hey, and we're back. You're listening to Gadfly Radio with Martha Montelongo, Ben Boychuk, John Seiler. And we've been talking to Jim Manzi about his new book, Uncontrolled. And before we went to the break, Jim, and thank you for holding on, we were talking a bit about immigration, and we were also talking before about education. And it occurred to me over the break, a lot of the arguments that we tend to have on the right among conservatives and libertarians, because this is sort of you've got conservatives and libertarians on this show, is really a question of degree as opposed to kind. I mean, we can say, there ought not be government at all, but ultimately we will have to agree to some sort of construct. And you do actually address this in the book. You have some pointed criticisms of the left and the libertarian right. And I wonder, when you talk about, you talk about deregulating education, you talk about decentralizing and unbundling welfare, and you talk about liberalizing immigration. You also talk about the limits of those things. What kind of maybe give us an idea of, when there's the limits of the libertarian idea of no government.
Right. Well, without operating at that extremely high strategic plane, what I tried to describe was the need, say, in a market economy, right, to allow firms to try things that seem stupid and to lots of external observers. And I talked about this in the context of my company and how allowing kind of the to and fro of people down at the coalface of the economy just trying things in an unconstrained way is not helpful for innovation, but required for innovation when you're in a frontier economy like the United States.
Right. I agree with that. I live with a man who he dropped out of school, and he actually got kicked out. He was sent to a continuation school, and he was, basically, and by all the conventional definitions, he would be someone who was a lost cause or, hopeless. But he actually knows how to, he could build a house if he had to. He can build a motorcycle,
right,
a high-performance motorcycle. He understands machinery, even the high-tech machinery. He's a manager now, and, he's been studying and working with the work of Dave Logan, who is the author of the 3 Laws of Performance and tribal leadership, and really implementing some of that through in the factory that he works in manufacturing, and they're actually growing and in California at a time when businesses are struggling, because they're very dynamic. It's it is about what you're talking about in terms of empowering individuals and allowing creativity to take place. And we're actually looking at encouraging his daughters, who are schooled in public education and they didn't go to college, and they're young mothers, to homeschool their kids, even though they're not teachers, they're not credentialed, and they don't know beyond basic math, and their writing skills are probably just adequate, but there's so much out there in terms of resources that I've convinced him, and I think he agrees, that they could do better than any public school that they're going to send their kids to. In terms of schooling educating their kids.
I'm with you. And, I started a company in this spare bedroom in my apartment that has now hired a lot of people in California, among other places. And, what in that story, as I go through it, I say, well, that's really great. But the reality is, in creating that company, here are these other people who lost money. There were, on the whole, on net, society ended up, I think, ahead. But in that case, there are specific people at other IT organizations that did worse. And what I say is, it is natural and inevitable that they are going to attempt to build political coalitions to restrict innovation. And we can get mad about that, and we can wish it weren't true, but that's like trying to wish away an aspect of human nature. And so that creates this fundamental tension that we can try and ignore, but then we don't have a realistic political program. And really the last third of the book is about this whole issue of this tension between innovation and trial and error on one hand, and the limits to how much disruption society can handle, and how you deal with this problem of inevitably political coalitions emerging to try and restrain innovation, and how do we manage it?
Right. And, It is a fascinating book, and I didn't even. I mean, the great trick you really pull off in this book is the first third of it is all about the history of the philosophy of science, which is a very readable and interesting part of the book. So there's a lot going on in Uncontrolled, Jim Manzi, and we appreciate you taking the time. Again, the book is called Uncontrolled, The Surprising Payoff of Trial and Error for Business, Politics, and Society.
Yeah.
Jim, thanks for joining us again.
Yeah, thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
And,
Thanks for having me.
and there's nothing wrong with failing, and then failing, and then doing it again, right? Trying again. Trial and error.
It's
part of learning.
If at first
how do you
don't
grow?
succeed.
Exactly.
Exactly.
All right, thank you, Jim.
Thanks
you very much.
All right, we'll
joining
be
us.
back with more. Let's talk about the governor and what. Let's.
Proposition 29 is a big one, and
Okay.
and I know John has some great stories up at Cal Watchdog that we're going to want to talk about too.
All right, Stephen Green had a hot piece too. All right, we'll be back. Don't go away. We'll shake it up here. Gadfly Radio, CRN. Don't go away.
Have you heard? Proactive is better than ever. Stay